everybody. Thank you. Welcome to Science and Stuff, the show where we talk about science and stuff. I'm Anna Wenger, the showrunner of Mission Unstoppable, everybody's favorite TV show about amazing leaders in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. You can catch Mission Unstoppable Saturday mornings on CBS. This week on Science and Stuff, we have two incredible guests. First up is geologist and earthquake expert Dr. Wendy Bohan. And right after Wendy, we'll talk to biomedical engineer Professor Ronke Olabisi about bones and space, of all things. If you want to ask our guests questions, as always, you can write them in our chat or go to @CBS Unstoppable on Instagram and DM us right now. It's super fun to be able to ask these scientists questions at a whim. I love doing it every week, and so you should too. And remember to subscribe to our Twitch channel so you don't miss an episode of Science and Stuff. And now it's time for everybody's favorite...
Science news that impress your friends. Can't stop thinking about it if you wanted to.
That's right, it's Science Newsy News that will impress your friends that you can't stop thinking about even if you wanted to. Our first story today, oh my god, I love this. Scientists inspired by TV shows are using fake sea turtle eggs to track poachers. That's right. Everybody loves sea turtles, and they have swum our oceans for over 100 million years. But now this ancient animal is in danger of disappearing forever. 6 of the 7 species of sea turtles are threatened with extinction. That's right. And one of the gravest threats to sea turtles comes from poaching. Poachers rob turtle nests for the eggs, which are considered a delicacy in many regions. Egg poaching has devastating effects on sea turtle populations. Over 5% annually are poached. So protecting sea turtle nests from poaching can help reverse population declines. A team of scientists who were inspired by the TV shows Breaking Bad and The Wire created Investigator, which is a 3D printed replica of a sea turtle egg that has a hidden GPS tracking unit inside of it. Oh my gosh, that is so cool. It looks so much like a real sea turtle egg. This device will send location information to the scientists when the eggs are changing hands between poachers and transported from one place to another. So look out, poachers. Scientists are after you. You heard it here first. Oh, that's great. See, we have great TV show ideas here to catch a poacher. That would be an excellent TV show. Science Newsy News number 2. Microevolution is being demonstrated in humans in the fact that less people are being born today with wisdom teeth than in previous generations. Wisdom teeth, the cash cow of the dental industry. Who here has had their wisdom teeth surgically removed? We've all been through it. The recovery from surgery, other than having all the ice cream that you want to eat, totally stinks. But luckily, future generations won't have to deal with it the way that we did. The Journal of Anatomy conducted a recent study and found the human race is evolving faster than it ever has during the past 250 years. Natural selection, food that's easier to chew, and our brains expanding, causing our jaws to narrow, have all played a part in fewer people developing wisdom teeth. In fact, currently 35% of the population are missing their wisdom teeth. That is crazy. So why did we ever have wisdom teeth to begin with, you may be asking? Back in the day, our ancestors lived on a diet that incorporated tough and chewy leaves, roots, and raw meat. Sounds delicious. Our ability to chew with extra wisdom teeth was a huge advantage, especially because early man didn't visit the dentist. There were no dentists. If a tooth falled out, you just needed another one, like a wisdom tooth. Wisdom teeth were helpful when other teeth may have broken, worn down, or even fallen out from all that root chewing. This is our next newsy news. This is very exciting. We have an update on last week's murder hornet tracking. Elizabeth Bakewet, pay attention. On last week's Newsy News, we talked about the capture of a live murder hornet in Washington State and the scientists tying a tracker to it. I told you we'd keep you updated on it, so here's the update. We did indeed find a picture of the GPS tracker tied to the Hornet using, that's right, dental floss. This seems extremely difficult to do and actually keep on the Hornet. You can see them trying to tie one on just right there. And then we have another photo of an entomologist attaching a GPS unit to a murder hornet using glue. This didn't work out either because the glue didn't dry fast enough and the unit slid down the hornet's body and got trapped in its wings, making it unable to fly. And normally that would make me very sad. But murder hornets are an invasive species and literally murder honeybees. And honeybees are our friends. So, oh wait, hold on. I've got an update. Breaking news. This is real. This just in. Officials are urging anyone who see a murder hornet to resist the urge to kill it. Instead, they'd like people to notify them as to when they saw it and what direction it was flying in to help them narrow down the location of the nest. I can tell you this much, after seeing those murder hornets and the size of them, I have absolutely no problem resisting the urge to kill a murder hornet. I would totally see one and just be like, it went that way. So scientists, you can count on me. This is actually our breaking news, our update. The first hive of murder hornets was tracked and destroyed by local authorities in Blaine, Washington over the weekend. That is crazy. Somebody totally must have reported a murder hornet. Oh no, it turns out they were able to get a GPS device on a live hornet caught by the Washington State Agricultural Department on Wednesday. In only 2 days, the hornet led the team of researchers back to its nest. I know what you're thinking. Which method was used to affix the tracker to the hornet? Glue or dental floss? My producer, Kiki, says that I may only tell you the answer through dance. So here is the answer. You get it? Floss. Floss dance. It worked. They worked the floss. It worked! There it is! There it is again. I guess they finally successfully did it. That is amazing. Congratulations, scientists in Washington State. That is so cool. And that wraps up this week's
Science News that interests your friends, so you can't stop thinking about it if you wanted to.
Let's bring on our first guest, Dr. Wendy Bohan, geologist and earthquake expert. Hi, Wendy. I'm going to do this little intro about how great you are. Dr. Wendy Bohan is a geologist who studies earthquakes and works to improve the communication of hazard and risk before, during, and after rapid onset geologic hazards. Welcome, Dr. Wendy Bohan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I've never been on Twitch before, so this is awesome.
Yes, Twitch is going to love you so much. And I don't know. I don't think we've ever met before, maybe briefly, but I've watched your segment on Mission Unstoppable so many times. I feel like I know you. We also did an amazing interview with you where you were very inspiring. I mean, brought me to tears about how science needs everybody's voices. And I just think that was so beautiful. But I'm so glad that you're able to join us here again today.
I feel like I already know you.
Awesome. Great. Well, then let's get right to it. Tell us what is the difference between a geologist and a seismologist?
That's a good question, and it's a common misconception. So seismologists study the inside of the earth. They use earthquake waves because the earthquake waves travel all the way through the earth, and we can't go into the middle of the earth, so we have to be really creative about how we study the inside. And that's what seismologists do. Geologists, that's a much broader category. Geologists study everything from rocks and minerals to how to get oil and gas out of the ground to how we can live with earthquakes and volcanoes. We talk about how the biology interacts with the geology in order to create what's called the critical zone, which is important to us because that's where life is.
Wow. So you study all of the effects of seismic events on the critical zone.
Well, those are the things people care about, right? Like you
Right,
don't want to
right,
know every earthquake that happens. You only want to
right.
know the earthquakes that are going to make a difference to people and the things that are important to us, like our houses, our buildings, our roads, and our schools.
Right. Our writer Brendan wanted me specifically to ask you: is your job anything like or Rhonda Lebeck, seismologist in the movie Tremors? Do you remember that movie?
I haven't seen Tremors in like 20 years, maybe.
Right.
But I can tell you that it's never like you think it is on TV, for better or worse, right? Like there are not underground snakes. So better.
They
Also,
great. Agree
you know,
that that is better.
Kevin Bacon not in my office. So worse. But
Exactly.
you know, running around outside, that is an option for some geologists. That's something that we can do. You can travel all around the world to learn about earthquakes, or you can work in a laboratory. That's another thing. If you like computer modeling, if you like using lasers to shoot at rocks, those are all things that geologists do to study the earth.
That is so cool. And what about earthquake weather? Everybody always says like, "Oh, it's earthquake weather." Is that a real thing?
So sadly, no. And also gladly no. Earthquakes are really unpredictable, right? And we as human beings really don't like things to be unpredictable. And so we try and create stories that make ourselves feel better. And one of those stories, people tend to remember the biggest earthquake that happened in their lifetime. And the weather that was surrounding that event, or if it was during the day or during the night, they start to associate those things with earthquakes. So in some parts of the world, hot, dry weather is considered earthquake weather. In other parts of the world, cold, wet weather is considered earthquake weather. But in reality, earthquakes start miles below the surface of the earth. And so the weather doesn't affect them at all.
Right. God, that makes sense. Yeah. And being from California, I do feel like hot, dry weather, just because that's what our weather normally is considered earthquake weather.
Yep.
And when we talked to you on the show, we were talking about earthquakes on earthquakes. They wouldn't be called earthquakes. They'd be called Marsquakes because they're quakes that happen on Mars, which is something that a lot of people are not aware of. Will you tell us a little bit about how Marsquakes work?
So many of the planetary bodies we suspect have things that happen that shake the ground. So that's what an earthquake is, right? We have tectonic plates. The surface of the earth is covered by a thin skin of rock that's broken up into these pieces, kind of like an eggshell. You know, you peel it and you have those big pieces. The places where those tectonic plates on earth come together are the places where we have earthquakes. And because they're moving, they smash into each other. And places like the moon and Mars, we think that the ground breaks and cracks and shakes because of thermal expansion and contraction. So it gets really, really hot during the day when the sun is, you know, beating down on it and it expands a little bit. And then at night it gets really cold and it contracts a little bit. And that contraction and expansion can cause earthquakes to happen. And so that's really important because we have put seismometers on the moon and on Mars. So we have a seismometer on Mars right
I didn't
now.
know that. That's so cool.
So cool. The NASA InSight mission has a seismometer and some other geophysical tools on the surface of Mars that are recording data right this exact second. Amazing. And you can go look at it. iris.edu. You can find the Mars data. You can go to NASA and find it. Anyway, it's important because just like on Earth, those earthquake waves or Marsquake waves or moonquake waves will tell us about what's inside those planetary bodies, which can tell us something about the formation and evolution of the rocky planets.
Right. Oh, that is so cool. Yes, and when it comes to regions in the U.S., I know that I'm from California, and I know that everybody always says, "Oh, California earthquakes," you know. And when we think about earthquakes, we always think about California. But what other regions in the U.S. are known to have earthquakes?
Oh, Anna, that is such a good question. So the entire west coast of California and Alaska are on a plate boundary, a place where those two tectonic plates come together and are rubbing or sliding underneath. And so that causes a lot of earthquakes along the west coast, the plate boundary. But all 50 states in the United States have earthquakes. So there is no place where earthquakes don't happen. They just happen less frequently, and they're usually much smaller. But important caveats. large earthquakes have happened in the central US in an area called the New Madrid seismic zone. There were two really large earthquakes there in the 1800s. I mean, like comparable to like big California
Wait,
earthquakes.
sorry,
People
where was
all over
this? Where was
the
this
East
in
Coast.
the 1800s?
It's in the central US, so in Missouri, that area.
Oh, I did not
Yeah.
know that.
Charleston, South Carolina had a really big damaging earthquake there. The problem there is that people aren't expecting earthquakes. What do we have on the East Coast?
Oh, right,
Hurricanes.
yeah.
What's in the Midwest? Tornadoes and floods. So we prepare for the hazard we're used to. So we may not have a lot of earthquakes, but when we do have earthquakes, they can be pretty damaging because our buildings aren't prepared, our bridges and other structures aren't prepared, and our population doesn't know what to do when they feel earthquake shaking.
This is a great question from our audience, Gilly, for you. Does global warming have an effect on earthquakes?
That is a really great question. So yes and no is the answer to that. So earthquakes, again, happen far below the surface. And things like glaciers melting because of the warming Earth can cause something, the rocks will rise back up. Isostatic rebound is what it's called, if you want one of those words to impress all your friends. And that can cause
Isostatic
the rocks to
rebound,
crack
just
and
as
break.
it repeats,
Isostatic rebound. Yes, sounds very cool. So, but global warming really doesn't have a huge effect on earthquakes because they're happening so far below the surface.
Right. Got it. Will earthquakes ever be able to be predicted?
Yeah, that's the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
30 years ago, people thought, probably soon we would be able to predict earthquakes. But the Earth is a really big system. There's a lot of variables that are going into that. And I almost think the question should be, even if we could predict earthquakes, how do we really learn to live with them really well, right? Because even if we can predict them, you're from California, your house is there, your family's there, your schools are there, your buildings are there. So we have to learn how to live with them, survive them, and then thrive in the aftermath of the earthquake. So maybe one day earthquakes will be predicted, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. And even if we are pursuing that avenue, we also really need to think about resilience. We need to think about earthquake engineering and how we can make sure that people are safe and are going to survive and thrive.
Right. Oh, we got another question from Slurpy Burpy. What does the big one actually mean? Should we be scared?
The big one depends on where you are. So if you're in the Midwest near that New Madrid seismic zone, that's what they think of as the big one, is another event along that fault. If you're in California, the big one means an earthquake on the San Andreas fault.
Right.
And I'm not sure. Oh, my computer is trying to answer for me. You don't know, computer. I know. If you live in the Pacific Northwest, the big one is an event on the Cascadia subduction zone.
Yeah.
So yes, all of those events could be damaging and catastrophic in terms of loss of life and property. We are trying to prepare for those events. We need to make sure that we're ready for those things when they happen. And we need to remember that California, the Pacific Northwest, that's earthquake country. It doesn't have to be the big one to be a damaging earthquake. So you have to be prepared all the time to drop down, take cover underneath a sturdy object, and hold on. That's called protective action. So make sure you're ready. You've got your emergency kit. Make sure you know what to do, because those smaller earthquakes can often be as damaging as a really large one if you're nearby.
So the answer is be prepared, and then you don't have to be scared.
Yes.
That is great. What magnitude of earthquake starts to put people in danger?
That's another really good question. And it's not as straightforward as it may sound, because there's three things that affect what you're going to feel during an earthquake. The magnitude, which is how big it is or how much energy it releases, how far away you are from the earthquake. I'm right now on the East Coast, so an earthquake in California is not going to bother me no matter how big it is, because I'm not going to feel it. Also, the local rock and soil conditions. So people that are nearby to the same place on the surface of the earth called the epicenter where the earthquake happens, it's down here, but this is the closest point. You could be over here, and another person could be over here, and they could shake entirely different amounts, because if you have loose rock and soil, that holds on to the seismic waves. They shake harder and for a longer period of time. It's called amplification. Right. So Generally, people really start to feel it when it's around a 4 or a 5. It starts to do damage, 5.5 to a 6. By the time you get up to a 7, you're doing pretty significant damage to any urban areas that are nearby.
Right. And question from our producer, Kiki. Why do earthquakes always seem to happen at night?
Right. So think about
wants to know.
when you're walking around during the day. You know, there's trucks going by, there's airplanes, or there used to be, not so much now. And, you know, there's people walking around, you're doing stuff, the TV's on, the music's playing, you're doing whatever you're doing. At night, everything is quiet. You're laying in your bed, and it's like super silent. And so when even a little bit of shaking happens, you feel it. And so we get a lot more reports of people feeling earthquakes at night, even really small earthquakes that normally during the day they wouldn't even notice. So you do feel it more often at night. That's true. But they don't happen more often at night.
Yes. That is true. And it's also if you're driving a car, like I never feel earthquakes when driving in a car. You know, people, because California earthquakes happen all the time, even little ones. People are like, oh, did you feel that? Did you feel that? If you're in a car, you're never going to feel it, you know. But you're right. If you're staying still, laying down, you're definitely going to feel it. Now it is time, Dr. Wendy Bohan, to play I Know Everything About. Each of our guests are experts at something, so we create a game especially for each of you. Wendy, the title of your game is I Know Everything About Rocks, and it's rock or fiction. I will name 10 different rocks or minerals. Some of these are real and some of these are fictional. You would be surprised how many movies, films, and TV have fake minerals and rocks. If you think the rock is real, shout rock. If you think it's fake, shout fiction. By playing, you'll get a chance to rise to the top of our prestigious Science and Stuff leaderboard. Oh, look at that. The margins are really shaping up nicely. You can see there are 5 people at the top tied for first place, even though Katie Kwan and Crystal Dilworth have no score next to them. You know, Katie?
I'm coming for you, Katie.
It's coming for you, Katie. You heard it from Bohan. Here we go. Let's play. First rock is kryptonite.
Fake. Superman.
That is right. Kryptonite, famous for bringing Superman, for removing all of the powers from Superman. Next up, the rock is sweetite. Sweetite.
Fake.
No, I'm so sorry. So sorry. That actually is a real rock. And we moved on from that, so I can't read you actually what it does. Oh, here it goes. Sweetite occurs in an oxidized vein in limestone bedrock with galena, ashroverite, wolfingite. I mean, these anglesite, cerussite. I mean, a lot of sites. Sweetite occurs with a lot of other sites. I think we should be aware of.
595 minerals on my mineralogy test in college. That was not one of them.
You're kidding. How many minerals and rocks exist?
Thousands. There's thousands of them.
This game is too hard. I made Katie Kwan guess dances. You're like, bring it on. I'll know. Okay, next up, it's unobtainium. Unobtainium.
Avatar.
Correct. You know it. That is the mineral that everybody's after in Avatar. But actually, well done. I looked this up, and unobtainium was actually coined by a science fiction writer in the 1950s, and it's been used in tons of science fiction works since then. So Avatar, James Cameron was borrowing it or keeping the tradition alive, depending on how you want to look at it. Next up,
tells it best.
Exactly. Next up, the rock or the item is called dilithium. Dilithium.
Yes. Any scientist knows this one. It is fake, and it was in Star Trek. Didn't it run the engine in Star Trek?
Yes, that is correct.
My dad's gonna be so excited.
It makes
I
love it. It makes the warp speed work. You knew it. She gets extra points for that. Next up, we have zippyite.
Because I got tricked on that last sweetie, I want to say this is fake. So I want to say it's real, but I'm going to say it's fake.
It's real. It's not fair. Zippyite. It's a rock. We picked like the weirdest, newest sounding rocks, I'm sure. Next up, sodalite.
Oh, sodalite, that's real.
It's
It's
real.
blue. It's beautiful. It's a feldspar.
Yes, it is beautiful. I love it that you knew. I saw that and I was like, I want one of those. So pretty. Next up, it's not just a suitcase, it's Samsonite.
That's real.
It's real. You're right. Awesome. Very well done. Oh, next up, mithril. Mithril.
Oh, that's from the Lord of the Rings. That is fake. I wish it was real.
It is. It is exactly J.R.R. Tolkien. Okay, here we go. Next up, pyrite.
Pyrite is fool's gold. It is real.
It is
Not real
and
gold,
it's so
but a real
pretty.
rock.
That's great. That is exactly right. It is so pretty, pyrite. I love it so much. Next up, okay, this one is called
This is from
Jerktonian.
SpongeBob SquarePants.
How do you know that? She knows
Because
it.
I have 2 little children.
Yeah, well done. Jerktonium is a green material that is known to change bikini bottomites into jerks when ingested. I love that. Well done, well done. Well done. Did a great job. And where does she land on our leaderboard?
Below Katie, but that's okay. I'm okay.
You know what though? I'm probably gonna
I'm
probably gonna ask the judges to re-look at your answers and give you extra points for the ones that you knew where they were from, because that to me is a bonus. Great
Anna.
job. Here's our very impressive leaderboard. But look, Katie Kwan is just going right off the top there. So I mean, we could say you did knock her right off.
Hey, I like it. I like the way you think, Anna.
Thank you. We have one last fun segment for you, and it's called Would You Rather? And this is what I need to go to Twitch for, because we are actually going to be asking you a Would You Rather question, and we are going to be polling our audience at the same time. Here we go. Would you rather, and we're going to need an explanation here. Would you rather be 10 feet from the epicenter of a 7.0 earthquake or 15 miles from a Mount St. Helens sized eruption? Would you rather be 10 feet from the epicenter of a 7.0
Okay.
earthquake or 15 miles from a Mount St. Helens?
The easy answer is that I would rather be 10 feet from the magnitude 7 epicenter. Because as long as I'm not in a building, I may get
Right.
thrown in the air, I may get thrown off my feet, but
Sure.
nothing can fall on me, and so I'd be okay.
Right.
Mount St. Helens did not erupt straight up. It actually erupted laterally. And so if you were 15 feet in the direction, or 15 miles in the direction it erupted, that would be terrible. If you were 15 miles in the other direction, that wouldn't be so bad. So it's dependent, but I would still go with earthquake.
She'd go with earthquake. I mean, I didn't know. So Mount St. Helens, what did it just like shoot out the side or something?
It was very unexpected. We hadn't seen a lot of lateral blasts. And what happened is it started to bulge, and then there was a magnitude, I think it was a 5.6, which caused the bulge to landslide, which caused depressurization of the volcano. So like if you poke a hole in a soda can and it all starts
Sure.
to squirt out in that direction, the landslide basically was the hole that got poked, and then everything squirted out to the side, which was really
wow.
catastrophic for people that were obviously in the path, including a famous geologist from the USGS named David Johnson.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. Well, there you have it, our earthquake answer. Oh, and the audience says as well they'd rather be in an earthquake. So there you go. They agree with our scientists. There you go. I think that's especially here in California, we're all just so much more familiar with earthquakes. Okay, next question. During a 7.0 earthquake, would you rather be in a single-story home built in 1950 or at the top of a skyscraper that was built in 2019? I say 2019 because skyscrapers built in 2020 probably haven't been finished yet. Because it takes a long time.
Again, it's
to build.
dependent.
Yeah.
I would rather be in a single-story home that's well built, because most single-story homes are wood frame construction, which bends really well. It's flexible. So they tend not to really fall down. They may come off their foundation. Things inside may fall, but they're not as likely
I'm
to
just
collapse
taking
on
notes for my single-story home, which was built in 1950, which is why we asked this question.
you. Yeah.
And is on a small
it could
fault
also
in
be...
Los Angeles.
That's hard not to be on a fault if you're in Los Angeles. But if you were, say, at the top of a skyscraper in Japan, you're likely to also be very safe because they tend to have excellent seismic safety. They have dampers and things that they put on hospitals and buildings. And so you can weather earthquakes well in either one of those environments as long as they are both seismically sound.
Oh, got it. But you picked
The 50s. Single story.
The 50s single-story home.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Interesting. Do we have an audience response yet? 50-50, split down the middle. I think people are so much more comfortable too with tall buildings now. You know, it's like we hear so much about all of the science that, you know, scientists like you are putting into what would be the safest way to build a super tall building. And we hear so much about that. We would feel safe in either way. So that's good. We feel safe. Next up. Oh, this is a tough one. Is going to take some contemplating. Would you rather study rocks with The Rock or study rocks with Chris Rock?
All day long with The Rock.
The
I
Rock?
love you, Rock.
Really?
I love you, Rock.
Rock, if you're out there, Dr. Wendy Bohan loves you. Big fan. Chris Rock, if you're out there, I pick you because even though I may have to do most of the studying, I know you would provide a lot of comedy, and that's very important to me. So that is excellent, and that is at the end of our game of Would You Rather. What does our audience say, The Rock or Chris Rock? I really want to know. Split again, 50-50. Wow, we asked 2 hard questions. We need to come up with some easier ones next time. But anyway, well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Wendy Bohan. Where can we tell our audience where we can find you on social media?
I'm basically everywhere at Dr. Wendy Rocks.
Dr. Wendy Rocks.
So,
that's a great handle. I love it.
Thank you. I crowdsourced it on Twitter.
Very well done. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. And I'm sure
Thanks
we'll
for
see
having
you
me.
again
Thanks, everybody.
soon.
Have a great night.
All right. Bye. Thank you. All right. And now it's time to welcome our next guest, Professor Ronke Olabisi. Ronke Olabisi is an assistant professor of biomedical engineering at UC Irvine who works on growing bone and human tissue. That's right, growing bone and human tissue. She has degrees listen very carefully here. She has degrees in aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, as well as a biomedical engineering PhD. And she also fenced competitively in college and in some cases in the men's division. Are you kidding me? Is all of that true?
So, what was your question?
I just said, is all of that true?
Yes, all of that's true.
So Dr. Ronke Olabisi, am I pronouncing your last name right? I want to make sure I get it right.
Yeah, Ronke Olabisi.
Olabisi. Okay, got it. And when you were on Mission Unstoppable, we talked to you specifically about one thing that you were working on, and that was the regrowth of bone using nacre from the inside of an oyster shell. And specifically, I think people were so fascinated. And, you know, it's really funny because when I tell people about the show that I'm show running and how cool it is and how I get to meet so many cool scientists, I always bring you up because it's such an easy and a grabby and exciting thing to tell people that, you know, about 3,000 years ago, a Mayan skull was discovered, and that was it one tooth or a couple of teeth in the skull?
It was 3.
It was 3 teeth, 3 just right across the bottom there, were discovered to have nacre, which is the inside of an oyster shell, sort of, grown into the actual bone of the tooth, which shows modern science that the Mayans had figured out some way to create the regrowth of bone using the inside of an oyster shell. And can you tell us just a little bit about how scientists discovered this?
So it's actually a really cool story. So archaeologists in about 1931, they discovered that fragment that in and they dated it to be about 7th century BC. And they assumed initially, oh, well, they probably wanted their corpse to look super pretty. And so they were missing teeth, so they shoved some fake Mayan teeth in there. And then in 1972, a dentist named Dr. Bobbio, he asked, that looks a little too good to be post-mortem. Can I x-ray this? And it had been sitting in, I believe it was Boston Museum for quite some time, and they gave him permission to x-ray it, and he found that there was bony growth into the teeth, and that was the first osseous integration ever, and that they've documented with the bony ingrowth. And so those teeth, think about it. There are a lot of people nowadays who have these tooth implants, and they don't last. They'll fall out. They need grafts to keep them stabilized. And these teeth stayed in after the person died, after they were degraded into little teeny tiny body parts, and after all that was left of the person was a fragment of their jaw. And so the Maya had accomplished better than what we have today. And so I think it's a great story.
It is such a good story, and to think that they did that, almost 3,000 years ago, is just incredible. And are you still working on that particular project?
So I actually started, and I think this is one of the wonderful things about having good mentors. I started this project at the encouragement of one of my mentors, Dr. Jennifer West, who's now at Duke. And I kept trying to get funding for this other project that I wasn't really excited about. But every time I talked about this nacre project, she said I just glowed. And so she encouraged me to write a grant for it. And so in addition to that, I'm working on wound healing. In addition to that, things to help with macular degeneration. And so one of the things that's really great about being a professor is that you can have an idea and see where it goes. And so I have a lot of projects that I'm interested in pursuing and that we are researching and looking into.
That's so cool. It would be so amazing if we were able to use oyster shells to help with macular degeneration. It's such an incredible thing. And in addition to all of these other things that you're doing, you're also an expert on how our bodies behave in space, or what happens to our bodies while in space, correct?
I always hesitate when people call me an expert in anything, because the more you learn about something, the more you know how little you know. However, I do know a lot about it, and I teach a class on it, and I'm working with another couple of really great people who are leaders in the field, Dr. Ava Newman, to write a textbook on it. So I know a good deal.
You know more than most people. We'll leave it at that about for how our bodies behave in space. So, how did you become interested in that subject?
So, as far back as I can remember, I wanted to become an astronaut, and that love led me into doing aerospace engineering. And I had a professor who asked me, as in a class, the entire class, he asked us to come up with a composite material for a non-aerospace application. And so we were learning how to make materials, and he said, let's make one for non-aerospace. And I just searched the web because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I found this picture of a hip implant breaking through the bone. And I just didn't understand why was it doing that, what was going on. And the more I learned about bone, the more I learned how it adapts itself to its environment. And because when you have an implant, you have a stress imbalance, So the metal implant was much stronger than the bone. And because it was much stronger than the bone said, well, I don't need to be here. You're doing all the work.
Right,
and so
right.
it got really thin and it busted through it. And so then I went down this rabbit hole on bone, and that's how I got into biomedical engineering. But the rabbit hole, it affects astronauts too. So astronauts can come back having osteopenia, which is weakened bone. They can have osteoporosis because most of your bones are there to support your weight. And when you don't have any weight, when you're weightless, they're like, dude, what am I doing here? And they start to resort.
It's kind of like the whole if you don't use it, you lose it type of thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. It's like atrophy or well, that's as it pertains to muscles, but
muscle atrophies, bone resorbs.
Right. Got it. And what happens? So then what would happen? How long does it take this to happen? Like, how long does an astronaut have to be in space for the effects of that to take hold of their bones?
So there's this really great diagram of at what time scale everything starts to affect you. And so upon entry into microgravity, you have this headward fluid shift, and that affects your cardiovascular system. Your vision, you start to see changes in about a week or two. Your bones, you start to see changes on the order of months. Well, because you have a headache immediately. Everybody describes it as the worst headache of your life. And so imagine standing on your head, and that is entirely, like, that's much more because you're in gravity. But when you have a headward fluid shift, it makes your face feel full and your whole head feel full. And so each of these changes happen at different time points. And with bones, it's more like months. But people they lose about 1 to 3% of their bone mass per month. Mm-hmm. So it's more of a monthly scale. Per month, yeah.
That's fast. So what happens when they come, like, say an astronaut's do they go up for 3 months? I feel like I should know this and I don't even know. But if they were to go up for 3 months, what would happen when they return to Earth?
Well, so there's so many, right now the missions on the space station are generally between 6 and 12 months. There's so many different changes that happen. And so you have your balance is affected. Like, it's not just a bone thing; it's muscle, it's everything, right? And so you've got these in your ear. They tell you which way is up, which way is sideways, which way is down. So you can't really walk because of the balance, because that stops working, and you can only tell rotation. However, let's pretend that balance is not an issue. Like, you can't walk straight; you're like walking like that.
Right.
If balance isn't an issue, one of the adaptations of your body, you're upside down, well, not upside down, but you have this headward fluid shift, and your body thinks there is entirely too much fluid in here because I have these receptors all over that are saying this is how much should be up here, this is how much should be down here, but there's too much up here. So it starts to make you pee a lot, and you get rid of a lot of your blood volume. And so while you're in space, this means that you don't have a giant headache anymore. You don't have all of these things. However, when you go back to Earth and the gravity pulls your blood down, it means you don't have enough blood in your head to stay conscious. And so that's something called orthostatic intolerance. You can't stand up. You won't see astronauts returning from the space station standing on their own. They'll be carried. In addition
for how
to that,
long?
so
how long can they not stand? Sorry. Yeah.
So it takes them a while to some of them will start to load fluids that are hypertonic so that they'll retain it. And it takes the recovery time, I think it varies between people. Women are more likely to suffer. This is a great, interesting difference. Women are more likely to suffer from orthostatic intolerance. However, they're more able to withstand high gravitational loads. So the high Gs without passing out, like, you've seen in those where people go in the centrifuge and they're spinning and they're like, boom,
and
then
like,
they pass out.
Yeah.
Women, our vasculature is smaller and acts more like a built-in G suit. So that doesn't happen to us as much. But the same vascular system means it's smaller, and so you're more likely to pass out from orthostatic intolerance. And so these changes, it's person dependent, but usually they take about, unless you're getting IV fluids, which you're not, and they take about
Right.
2 weeks to a month to things like that.
Right. And one of our audience members put a question up on, and then I got all carried away and I forgot to ask you. But Slurpy Burpy asks, can you get the bone mass back? Like if you were to lose bone mass every month you're up there, then can you get the bone mass back when you come back?
So the return is really slow.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to gain bone mass after the age of 35 to begin with. So the goal is to not lose it in the first place. That's the overlying goal. You don't want to lose that bone. It's they return it to a certain they approach it, and so like this is the math, the asymptotic approach. They approach where they were before. I
Right.
believe there are people who have gotten pretty much back to where they are,
Right.
but it's like bone, you build all, and that's why they say, get your calcium, drink your milk,
Right.
do all of these things, work out, because you build the majority of your bone up until age 35, and then you start to lose it anyway.
Right.
Right? And so
So if the astronauts
it's
were
one of
young, we
those
got another
things.
question. Slurpy Burpy really wants to know about this astronaut thing. I think they want to be an astronaut. So would young astronauts do you think that NASA should be looking for young astronauts so that they can regenerate? Well, at least the ones that are going to go to the space station, for 6 months to a year. Do you think the young astronauts would get their bone mass better? Can they get it back faster than somebody over 35?
So I think the youngest person that they ever selected was 25, and they've never really done that again. The last group I know that was selected in 2017, I'm not sure the ages there, but the 2013, the youngest was 39. And so
Okay.
there's just a level of training and
Yeah.
and experience that it's
Yeah.
not going to be young people. Now, that having been said, with all of the countermeasures, so the goal is countermeasures. The goal is we are going to select people who are relatively healthy, who don't already have bone problems,
Right.
and we're going to prevent them from developing these problems. And the exercise routine really started to work once they figured out that a lot of the bone loss was due to retention of salt.
I see.
And salt was being retained in their skin, and they think it might be because, you're not washing as much up there, and
Gross.
when you
Yeah.
sweat, it evaporates in different ways on you and
Sure.
stuck in the skin. So they're changing it with nutrition. So nutrition
Oh,
and
that's good.
exercise, they've been able to keep most of their bone. It's not 100% stopped the loss, but they've pretty much figured out how to prevent the 1 to 3% per month.
That makes sense. The exercise would keep your bones, because then they'd be using it and not losing it, as they say.
Exactly.
That makes sense. So I used to, before I got into this amazing business, work in anime, and I would I would rewrite translations of Japanese comic books, and one of them was called Planetes, and it was like took place in the future, and it took place in space and all of that. And I remember they had a character that was born on a space station. And because she had been born on a space station and grown up on a space station, even though there was a gravity chamber in the space station, she was taller than all of the other people who had not been born on the space station. And they said, in the book, it was fantasy, obviously, but that the reason was that she just grew taller because there was just less pressure. Could that happen? I love it that you I read this thing in a comic book once, and I'm wondering if it's real.
No, I mean, I read those kinds of science fiction stories too, where everybody was
Yeah.
taller and nobody liked going back to Earth, and swimming
Yeah.
they thought was like terrible.
Yes.
And I really feel as though it's more determined by genetics and nutrition
Right.
then, because when there have been animals that have been taken up at different, and I believe there might be some sort of thing that can't function properly. Like,
Right.
so skin gets thinner, and they've identified the fact that the molecules, the pro-collagen molecules, aren't
Yeah.
able to form properly. So, like, when they took up eggs, like quail eggs, I think they were, they couldn't hatch because they couldn't get close enough to the center of they couldn't get close enough to the shell to get oxygen exchange, right? And so there were, I think, rats that were sent up and frogs that were sent up that were pregnant when they were sent up. And so the rats, they just kind of let their babies float away, and they weren't as good at recovering them, so they had to be recovered for them.
Okay, good. That's a good happy
Whereas
ending.
frogs,
Okay,
the
good.
best frogs were the tree frogs, because they're like, oh, dude, we know
I'll just
what
grab
what
onto
this
this.
is.
Yeah.
No, they just spread out, and so they didn't get motion sick and throw up all the time.
Oh,
However,
wow.
because
Yeah.
regular frogs just tumbled and tumbled.
Yeah.
None of the reports discussed those animals getting very large.
Right.
That's
Right.
why I would,
The comic
based
book was
on the
wrong.
research, like,
Right.
rather than wonder, okay, based on the research,
I
there
love
haven't
it.
been giant frogs or giant
I
rats
love
or
it that you
giant-
had an answer for that. That is, I love that. You're like, well, science would say. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, that is excellent to know. Thank you so much. I love it that you know so much about this. I could listen to it all day, but it is time for our game. Now, on Science and Stuff, we play a game with all of our experts called I Know Everything About. And we tailor each episode of I Know Everything About to your expertise. But you, in addition to everything else that you know about also happen to know about Star Trek. And so we're going to ask you a bunch of questions about Star Trek, and you will have the chance to get to the top of our very prestigious leaderboard. Seen here, our leaderboard. Oh, there we go. The margins are getting even crazier as we go along. But you can see we have 5 people tied for first place, but that's okay because we are going to be having a all-star game, and we'd love for you to get a spot in that. So the title of your game is I Know Everything About Star Trek. Now, we know this isn't necessarily something you have a degree in, but, it's science adjacent. It's science fiction, So how we're going to play is I'm going to be describing 10 objects from the Star Trek universe, and you will try and guess what they are based on my description of them. Got it?
Okay.
So it's kind of like Jeopardy. I'm going to give you the answer. You tell me what it is. All right, here we go. The first answer is, this is a spacecraft propulsion system that allows spaceships to travel at speeds greater than the speed of light.
Warp drive.
That's right. Ding, ding, ding. Excellent.
I'm such a Star Trek geek.
Perfect. Then you're probably going to get all 10 right. I love it. And hopefully my descriptions are good. Okay, ready? This next one is a stealth technology that can cause objects such as spaceships or individuals to be partially or wholly invisible.
Cloaking.
Cloaking device is correct. That's 2 for 2. Number 3, this is a machine that can create and recycle things. These were originally used to These were originally used to simply synthesize meals on demand, but in later episodes, much larger non-food items appear.
The
Do you know what it is?
replicator.
That's right, a replicator. Number 3. I mean, she doesn't even have to think about it. Here, it's harder for me to read the question than it is for you to answer it. Next up, number 4. This device is used for voice communication. It can also serve as an emergency signaling device or beacon, similar to a transponder. It allows direct contact between individuals or via a ship's communication system.
A tricorder.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
no, a communicator.
Communicator is correct. Oh, she corrected herself. That counts. She gets it. She gets it. Next up, this is a needleless injector used to inject medicine into a patient. A needleless injector. It says jet injector.
Did they just call it the hypo spray?
Yes, they did call it the hypo spray. Okay. Oh, you've got a fan here. E.J. Parker says, "Go, Dr. Olabisi." Number 6, a focused linear graviton beam, which can be used by starships and space stations to physically manipulate objects in space. I mean, a graviton beam. Tractor beam, yes. Correct. I mean, she's nailing it. Here we go. Next up, this object causes a person or object to dematerialize. Then it beams it to a target location where it rematerializes.
A transporter device.
That's right, a transporter. Here we go. This is a multifunction handheld device used for environment scanning, data analysis, and recording data. Does 3 things.
That's the tricorder.
There's the tricorder. She got it. I mean, we're at 8 for 8 here. Number 9. This is an energy weapon with multiple settings for degrees of intensity.
Phaser.
Phaser, yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is it. Number 10. Here we go. This is a chamber or facility in which a user can experience a holographic or computer simulated physical environment.
A holodeck.
Holodeck! She got it. She got all of them. That is it. Yay.
I actually took a class with somebody trying to develop a holodeck.
What'd you say? You're trying to develop a holodeck? Wait, what did you say? This just in.
Yeah, I took a class with a group of researchers that were trying to develop holodecks.
Oh my gosh. Did it seem like it's going to be possible?
That's exactly why I took the class. This is so cool.
I love it. And are you fans of all of the Star Trek series, or specifically the original one, or what is your?
So I'm a huge fan of the original, the Next Generation, things like that. Although I must say that Nimoy was my only Spock. There is no other
she's
Spock.
Loyal. She's loyal.
I'm not as huge a fan of the ones that are the current movies, simply because I really liked that Spock essentially had emotional problems.
Yeah, right?
Because he was he had no emotions.
Yes.
And the new Spock, he gets angry. And I'm like,
it's not right.
No.
It's not right.
And the explanation for him getting angry was that the old Spock went back in time, and because he went back in time, he changed the original Spock's or this new Spock's upbringing. However, they didn't do they didn't get the timeline correct, because Spock, as we knew him, was 65 years old. So him going back 25 in times, he'd still be an adult. He wasn't a little kid. I'm like, you get it right if you're going to change it. That's why
these writers, I tell you, they do whatever they want. They do whatever they want. It's a problem. Oh my gosh, that was
my nerd voice coming out.
No, I understand and I respect it. I love it. I love it. So thank you so much. We have one more quick thing I think that we wanted to do, right? Oh, by the way, you're on our leaderboard now. I mean, she's right up there in the top. I mean, now we're going to have to look at this. Look, you moved her up to the top. There she is. Good job.
But that's not really fair, because that's not on science. That's on science fiction.
Yeah, but it's fun. It's the stuff portion. It's science in stuff. See, I being a Hollywood writer,
I got it on stuff.
I put that stuff in there, so I could do whatever I want. That's what I told you. We do whatever we want. So yes, thank you so much. Okay. Now, because you know so much about movies and you're an expert in space, I'm sure you watch space movies all the time and you're like, that's not possible. The ones that are trying to be real. The science fiction ones we can give a pass, but the ones that are trying to be real, we wanted to show you some photos from astronauts from movies and ask you what is wrong with this picture. I'm going to show you movies, and you're going to tell me if it's real or not. And if it's not, what's wrong with it? Here we go. The first one up is from The Martian. You can see here, this is a photo from The Martian. Watney, Matt Damon's character, is pierced, creating a hole in his spacesuit. Lucky for him, his blood plugs the hole. What is wrong with this picture? His blood plugs the hole.
So there's so many things wrong with this whole scene. So on Mars, the atmosphere is so thin that that storm that essentially pierced him and blew him off into the distance, it would be like, little kids probably don't know this now, but if you clapped erasers and the chalk cloud came, it would be like walking through a chalk cloud. That's how thin the atmosphere is. So it would never have pierced him in the first place.
Well, there you go. That's
Certainly
problem
wouldn't
number one.
have had the power to lift him off his feet and drag him away from his companions. So
Got it.
Everything is wrong with that
Everything.
picture. He should
That's
not
the
have a
answer.
hole in him.
Everything is wrong with that picture. But The Martian is science fiction, so I suppose, right? Like, it's a science fiction.
But it's decent science fiction. They couldn't
pretty good.
change that
Yeah.
part, otherwise he wouldn't be left on Mars.
Yes. Okay, next up. Our next one is from Gravity. I think our audience is going to know what's wrong with it. Actually, let's see if the audience will answer what's wrong with this picture, because we talked about it earlier in our segment. Here we go. This is a picture from Gravity. After spending time in space, astronaut Ryan Stone lands back on Earth in a body of water, swims to shore, and lifts herself up to walk away as we dramatically fade into the credits. What is wrong with this picture? Let's see if somebody answers. She's spent a long time in space. She gets up right after she lands, and she walks away. Jiggly Bones! Help me, Kiki says Jiggly Bones. That is correct. Explain it, though.
That's one of the many issues with this picture. There's a really fun video of reviews that one of the Canadian, Chris Hadfield, he absolutely hated this movie because he said, the most capable astronaut that they have ever had is a woman, Peggy Whitson. And they did not like how Sandra Bullock was through all of it. Every astronaut I've spoken to hated that.
Yeah.
But she wouldn't be just in underwear underneath that. So people think that when you're in an EVA suit, it's to keep you warm against space, but one of the hardest things is to keep you cool. So they have this undergarment that has liquid that is, helping your temperature. So there's that really cool scene where she's spinning and she's in her underwear after getting out, but it wouldn't happen. She wouldn't just be in her underwear. She'd have this other suit that she'd have to contend with to get out of.
Right.
And so there's that. There's the being too weak to, depending on how long they had her up there. But also, they don't. The way it was presented was like in 6 months she became an astronaut, and that's not. That's like saying, I graduated Harvard Medical School in 3 months. It's like 6 to 7 years of training.
Right.
You know everything about your crew up there. They wouldn't have found out while they're up there that she had a daughter who died. So many. Again, that whole movie, everything is wrong with that scene.
Love it. All right. I think there's 2 more after this. Love it. Okay, we've got Ad Astra. Here's a scene from Ad Astra where Brad Pitt's character Roy encounters ferocious baboons on the space station without showing the actual graphic because it's a bit, graphic. Roy depressurizes the chamber and a baboon immediately explodes. What's wrong with this picture other than the fact that there are ferocious baboons on a space station?
So, I actually haven't seen this one, but I know that you would not explode.
That's number one.
You just wouldn't. Now, the best way to think about it is if you think about what we live in right now, the air that we breathe. At sea level, it's 1 atmosphere, right? When you go diving, you can increase that to 100 atmospheres, And then people who come up really rapidly, they don't explode. The difference
There you go.
between sea level to 1 atmosphere, or to deep between 1 to 1 atmosphere and 1 to 0, it's much lower. So you if you rapidly decompress, you would probably get the bends, or your ears would pop, or there's a whole host of things, but explosion is not one of them.
Not one of them. Got it.
At all.
Got it.
They actually had an astronaut who was exposed to 100% vacuum in a test, and you can find this on YouTube. They have the video. And what he remembers, like they got to him in time. The last thing he remembered was the saliva boiling off of his tongue, because the boiling point for liquids becomes much lower without pressure. And they were able to save him because I think they got in in 90 seconds. So they say you have 90 seconds to 2 minutes to save somebody who is in a vacuum, because what happens is that the gradient is so much greater for air to come out of you and into the vacuum that the oxygen is taken from your blood. So it doesn't matter if you can hold your breath. It's taken from your blood, and so
I don't want the
that's
oxygen
why
taken. Well, and I think this next question may have something to do with that as well. This is the last one. This is from 2001, A Space Odyssey. Here we see astronaut Dr. David Bowman leaping from an escape pod to the airlock on the ship, making a 14-second journey in the vacuum of space before he can pressurize the chamber. Is there anything wrong with this picture? 14 seconds in the vacuum of space.
I remember this scene, and I show it. He didn't take a 14-second journey. It took 14 seconds for it to repressurize. But what he did, he blew himself across and then grabbed the switch, and then the full repressurization was 14 seconds. But the time for him to get across was about 1 second, and it was very accurate. So again, the person who was actually in the vacuum, he kept saying, I'm losing pressure, I'm losing pressure, I'm losing pressure. And then with a vacuum, you can't talk anymore. Then he was silent, and then he passed out. And so he would have that time to get there. And so probably 10,
before you
but
pass
it started
out.
to repressurize. He would have that 1 to 2 seconds. And so this is an example I show of what they did right.
Right. Well, there you go. Space Odyssey. You're the only one who made it through the Ronke Olabisi School of Movie Making. So all you Hollywood filmmakers who are watching this, please, if you need some advice, we have her contact information. She knows what happens. That would be awesome if we got you a gig being a consultant on some movies. Or Star Trek. Oh, we need to introduce you to our friend Erin McDonald, who works on Star Trek. She's an astro rocket scientist. She does, I should know this. I should know exactly what she does. Astrophysicist, that's what it is. And she's a consultant on the new Star Trek. So I bet you guys would be great friends. We'll introduce you.
I like that one.
Yeah. Oh, she approves. You know why? Because they hired
the TV show, right? Discovery?
Yeah, the TV show. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yay! I love it. You heard it here. It's a good show. Thank you so much for joining us. Are you on social media? Do you have something you'd like us to follow you?
Yes.
What's your social media?
So the Olabisi Lab.
Oh, I love that. That's great. So you heard it here. Follow Dr. Ronke Olabisi at the Olabisi Lab. Love it. Thank you so much. And we'll see you soon, I hope. Thank you so much. Right on. Bye, Dr. Ronke. Bye.
Wait, you don't follow CBS Unstoppable on YouTube? How will you know when new videos drop? You better go subscribe before you miss a crazy STEM moment, like me walking a shark or making a black hole in my backyard.